Kufnun Chesef Gimel. Im Oichel Pochos Mi Kezayis, Yesh Mi Sha'omer She'ein Tzorch Netila. A person who's eating less than a kezayis, it could be that he doesn't need netila. Why? Because that's not enough to be mitama. Okay. Now, let's just see the Mishnah Berurah. If you're eating less than a kezayis, beforehand, the last halacha we learned about if you're eating less than a kebetza. Now we're speaking about eating less than a kezayis. V'hinei, the end of this Mishnah Berurah is a fascinating Mishnah Berurah. Hinei ataz posakein ledina, dein tzarich netila. V'cheinu das habas, bach, v'chein hiskim agro, v'abir ki Yosef. They became a shem araj bas. Okay? Now, that's one side. All the people who agree with Shulchan Aruch. V'abir ki Yosef, no. V'amagin Avrohom Baruch Zachariash, the afu pochas mi kezayis, dino ke pochas mi kebeitza, v'yitol yadav v'lo yivarech. Al kein lechatchila, nochon lahachmer b'zeh, and if you're eating less than a kezayis, that you should wash your hands. V'dad, the shir kezayis li'antila kuliyam hu af im haya pirurim dakin mitzarfim. Even if you have crumbs, you're eating matzah meal. If you ate a kezayis of matzah meal, I don't know if you should make a bracha on that altogether, but the tils you die and you'll leave. I don't know if you should make a bracha on it, but whatever. If you're eating bread for not bread purposes, it's there to moot the sharpness of the mashke. Even if you have a kabetza, why? Because it's not called that you ate bread. Okay, they made the gezerah on eating bread, and you're not eating bread, you're drinking schnapps. Because l'maisa, at the end of the day, you're eating bread. And if you're eating less than a kezayis of bread to put down your schnapps, so then near shavali yesh lismach shel lahatzich netila b'zeh af lechatchila. The belavach yesh mekilon if you're eating less than a kezayis. Ach b'kezayis or kebeitza yitol yadav lo yivarech because of the suffix. So this is like a classical put together different aspects of the shaila, and you can be meko even though for neither part by itself would we be meko. Okay. Sif Dalid. This is a fascinating halacha. A person who eats davar shetibuloi b'mashke. Now this is probably the most I don't know what to say. Discussed. Yeah, Pesach it's also again the Chok Yankiv Hilchos Pesach. Discussed chumrah or halacha. That's the subject. Are we about to learn a chumrah or are we about to learn a halacha? Okay. Davar shetibula be'echa b'shiva bashkim she'etzimon miyad shachat dam, which that's an abbreviation for yayin dvash shemen cholav tal dam mayim v'loy nisnagev, and it wasn't dried off. Afilu ein yadav noigis v'makam ha'mashkin tzarich netila b'loy bracha. If you're eating something that was hechsher l'kabel tuma because it was touched by one of these 7 things, then you have to wash your hands without a bracha. Now, I would like to ask a question to the olam. Could somebody tell me the difference between tal and mayim?
One disappears when the sun rises, right?
All will disappear when he did. And I don't think tal doesn't go away right when the sun rises either, you know. I don't know, my car could have it on at 8 o'clock in the morning, right? You know, it doesn't have to do with the sun rising. Okay, well, I'll just tell you, those who learned mikvos, this is a very important subject. This is discussed in many places, and it's all, H2O. It's all the same stuff, but the point of origin gives it a different name, and sometimes it'll actually have different halachas. I'll just share with you a fascinating divrei chamudis in Psachim. There it discusses sacks of flour that were put into storage, and the walls of the storage houses got damp, and the condensation dripped onto the flour. So the question is, does that make it chametz? Now, I don't have to share with you this piece of information. The condensation is water, right? It's not anything else. And yet, there is a machlokes achronim if that makes it chametz.
Does it cause a chemical reaction in the wheat? Imagine it would.
I would imagine it would too.
So doesn't it depend on what it does to the wheat rather than the wheat?
I don't think that that's necessarily true, because halachically we say that only certain things cause that to happen. And just to modernize that question, I'm sure nowadays we have meperis that could do something, but even a more fascinating question. This is a question which is a great debate of today's poskim. It's very negei halacha l'maisa. I would say 30 years ago, let's use that. I would say 60% of the population never heard of people who are gluten intolerant, right? 30 years ago, right?
Never heard of.
They just got sick. We didn't have a name.
No, I don't think that's true. I don't think that's true. Vadai 50 years ago, it was a rarity, a severe rarity, and I have a scientific explanation why this has happened. I'm not going to get involved in that here. I'm just going to tell you that there are people who want to eat matzah on Pesach, and people who are gluten-free people, they have a serious problem with eating matzah because the gluten is what actually causes the process, the chilutz process. So there's a question as to whether, do they have to have a bad stomach? Does it depend on how sick they are? But Baruch Hashem, the scientists and the need for parnasa have brought us to a place that there's some place in Ireland that produces wheat that does not have gluten in it. And people use that matzah for Pesach. And it cannot be machmetz. And even though it cannot be machmetz because it doesn't have gluten in it, there are those poskim that say that it's min chitim and you made a bread out of it, it doesn't make a difference. Now, how do you make it shmura? Right? That's a different question, but it's the poskim discuss this, and they say that you could use it.
People made it from other grains also.
It depends what your problem is. Okay, there are some people who need to have this, and so even though scientifically it's not going to be chametz, there are those that say that you could use it for matzah. We'll just leave it at that.
There's a simple answer why kol haroy b'hachmas is a special thing. Usually we say that kol haroy b'hachmas, that's the criteria.
I don't begin to understand your question. Chazal used terms that were understandable to the regular person on the street. And you have no question for the regular person on the street 500 years ago.
I mean, there wasn't a definition of what
right?
was
No,
kosher for. It was just a way for me to figure out
right.
From.
No, we didn't have this whole subject didn't exist.
That's true. But
So if it didn't exist, so then I'm not going to get too involved. I'll just share with you a fascinating piece of Torah, which this Torah, if I'm not mistaken, comes from the Baal Shem Tov, is the earliest source that I know, that he says that anything from the Marsha and further back of the classical Svarim that we have were written by Ruach HaKodesh. Okay? Now, what does that mean? And what's the nafkamina? So this is all from the Baal Shem. This is not what it means is that you can be medayik in their lashon and take out a halachic thing from that which they said, even if they definitely didn't mean it. In other words, because it was written Baruch HaKodesh, so it means that Kadosh Baruch Hu had them use those words so that you could be medayik it, even though they didn't necessarily mean it. And therefore, if let's say, I'll just use an example, let's say you find some kind of a lashon in a rishon that if you are medayik, it will come out that if you cook with a microwave on Shabbos, it's called bishul, then you could rely on that. Even though there's no question that 500 years ago, nobody was alluding to any microwave cooking, right? That's, I think that's a fair assumption. Okay? And what?
Did we finish with Tal versus Lion?
No, I'm just saying that the answer is that if you look in the Yochanan in Mikvois and in other places, he explains where each one comes from, and the point of origin gives it a different name.
Is that like a Ruchani difference between them?
I don't know. I don't think that the answer is Ruchani. It's called something else. It's basically what I would understand. It's similar to saying you have milk from a cow and milk from a goat, right?
That's the difference.
Okay, but it depends what it is that you're looking for. So I'm not sure if there will be any technical aspect of it being different, but it has a different thing, and the Pais can discuss these differences. And normally the halachos, all these things go together. I'll just tell you that just to give you a simple understanding of how halacha works, if you have water that's tameh and you freeze it, it loses its tumah. And when it turns back to water, it's tahor. Okay? Where'd it go? No, it's obviously the same thing, right? Where'd it go? Okay.
If it's exactly reversed or not.
No. This is even no matter how big this shear is. It's what? Well, you put Shabbat Kli, you put it back together. It's Tumah Yeshana. And that's what's called Tumah Yeshana. All right, whatever. But I'm not going to get. But all these are.
It's not called instructions.
No, Rabbi Yasher says it doesn't need to be chametzable. He's cholik on the simple thing that you learned in cheder.
Right, they said the reason is because it's
That's what does that have to do? And baseball and football are not the same game. I don't even look sure.
The pashtus of chametz.
No. So if you did, I would just like to repeat the conversation. Okay, I said that's not the reason. So he says, but the reason why rice is not chametz is because it's nisrach. So there's no kashur. There are many things that have different reasons. That is what I was going about. Okay, but
if they grew rice with gluten, then it would be okay for
the exact opposite. The exact opposite.
Because it's called rice.
Right. And just to add on to this ambiguity in halacha, in the back of the Ritva in Nida, there is a piece over there. I forgot who it is who wrote the bottom of the Ritva in Nida, in the cook, in that yellow edition. There's a piece about the simonim of snapir v'kaskeses, if that is what makes it kosher, or it's a simon that it's kosher. Now, this is a well-known chakir in the Achronim, And this is discussed for the last 150 years. I spoke to somebody from Sheiris that went into Rabbi Yashiv to ask him. They genetically engineered carp fish to not have scales on them. And the question was, does it affect the kashrus? No, as we know what kind of fish it is. And they can actually, nowadays, they can alter it and have them not have it. And the question was, is it a sibur or a siman? And Rabbi Yashiv's answer was, it's still kosher, but don't do it. We're not going to give a hechsher on it. Okay, so no, you have these kind of things all the time. All right, you just have to know, where it's happening. All right. Anyways, so the halacha is if you have dosha tibula in one of the shiva mashkim, even though you're not touching the place where it's wet, okay. Now, even if you're eating, going to, let's say, if you would take, like you're eating a salad, not a salad, like carrot sticks, and you're dipping them into, water or something like that.
Dressing your water.
Okay, that's what I'm saying, but it has to be one of the mash, and I don't get involved. I know you're going to start asking what % water does it have to be.
Salt water counts as
Yeah, I think so. Okay, how do you know that salt water counts?
I'm assuming because some place up.
That's right. Okay. Okay. All right. So.
Why does it count? I don't know.
Okay, so even if you wouldn't dip the whole of your whatever it is that you're eating for karpas into the whole thing, you just at the tip of it, you would still have to wash. All right.
That's where you don't need
And not get your hands wet. Okay. Even though that on Paris there was no takar v'netilas yadayim, hasam Paris atzmo lo nitmu me'ayadayim she'yadayim shniyasem ve'in sheni oisa shlishi b'chulin. Masha enkem b'shetibula b'mashka when you put it into the water u'b'mashka kaimon the negia b'yadayim etam oisa liyos tchila. That negia to the mashka makes him into tchila. Particularly kol yoda shlo yistame hamashkim al yodov v'yifsla achakach es oichel. Because what's going to happen is that you're going to touch the mashka. The mashka will make you daim rishayim, and then your food is going to become tummy. Yeah. All right. Chetibuloi b'oisam sheshaykim peiros ayek b'mayim linak oisam chashivi tibul b'mashka. Okay, v'dover she'ein dark to litva olios olav mashka, and it's ochna dilas yadayim, u'milsud l'shchicha I v'legozo be'raponim. V'atoivel etzvo b'mashkim u'moitzitz eno tzarch netila. The untitled chapter yadayim l'shtiyas hamashkin, like we will learn later on. Even though that you're eating it in a way that people do taste things like that. They stick their finger in and then they taste it to see if it tastes good. Okay, echa b'shiv hamashkim. Al shar mini mashkim she'neschachtem min haperos einam chashuv hamashkim. Dvash means dvash of dvarim. V'lo yisher tamarim oil shel min acher. It means bees dvash. V'kosu hapoiskim. This is very nogea to those who this whole halachas nagea to, Kosu hapoiskim. Kol mashkim shenichkershu ben al yedei bishul ben al yedei tzino ad she'ein b'hem tefech al manas latfiach lo chashiv mashkim. Okay, now this is, I'm just going to borrow this for thought. Anybody English here? Yeah, we have 2 Englishmen. In England, they have grape lollies. They take grape juice and they freeze it. Back then we call it popsicle in America. What a yachid does in his house is of no interest. Well, just like, many years we've been in Lakewood. The source of all minhagim come from Lakewood. Okay. So the question is, a person who eats that, what bracha do you make? Oh, you don't have a minute about brachas. You just have a minute about making it. Yeah.
But you make kiddush out of
I'm not sure about that.
Okay. So the question is, does it lose its shem mashke legabe bracha? And you need a kezayis or a revius. This is all discussed. Chacham ben Sina b'shul. Both. How much do you need for bracha chayla?
For bracha Rishon, there's no fear.
No. What bracha do you make on it? That's the bracha Rishona, Shaila. And bracha chayla is how much do you need? Why do you say agafen? As far as I know, that wine is a liquid. Okay.
Why?
No, not necessarily.
Because it lost its quality of.
It's not wine anymore.
So if you had a Slurpee, that's still called Mayim?
I have no idea. I know what a Slurpee is. Yes.
Vulture Slurpees.
Okay.
Grapefruit Slurpee, yeah.
All right. Halavai that you have anything to do with any kind of fruit inside of there. Okay.
No, you make it at home.
Okay. If you made it at home, it's not a Slurpee. It's called a smoothie.
Yeah, it's
Okay. Next word. It's not called a mashke, right? That it doesn't, it's not called a mashke. Zulas yayin o mayim. Huadin cholof shenikve v'chozu v'limucho chashiv mashke. But if he's a mekachas hamatogim b'dvash, im hadvash aleim korosh ad she'en b'hem tofech amanas latfiach l'kuli alma muter l'ochlon b'loi netila.
There's a whole tumult with the Welch's grapefruit that's making concentrate.
I don't know. Welch's grapefruit, the last tumble I know about it was that it's 100% kosher, and even though it's a goyish company and they don't do it. Yeah, but in other words, I'll just tell you just about 35 years ago at least, there's a company in America called Galileo Wines. A goyish company that makes wine in California, some major place, and they wanted to get a hechsher. And somebody came to inspect the plant, and what they found out was something amazing. Into the machine goes the grapes, and out of the other side comes wine. Nobody touches it. Right. It goes straight. There's no magayad at all. What? Okay, but I'm saying, and this was the question, whether they could make a hechsher on it or not. At the end, for whatever reason it was, they decided not to give it a hechsher. But I'm just saying, we live in a generation that many of the norms that existed are just not that norm anymore.
What's the halachas?
Okay, merkachas means some kind of what I was going to speak about is, when I was a kid, there was this food called Planters Peanut Block. Okay, you know what that is? They're glued together with caramelized sugar. That's okay, but I've seen them made with honey. Okay, then the question would be, if you ate that, would you have to wash?
So that's what this is talking about.
Right.
Well, you have to get a release out of it.
Well, you'd have to have a revius. Well,
wash
the honey.
No.
Yeah, choose. Oh.
No. Peanut block.
Peanuts with caramelized sugar.
Right. You know what I'm saying?
Why are you washing them up?
Because if they were made with honey, which I've seen them made with honey, right? So if the honey would be wet, so be a dawashati b'u b'mashke.
Likely not to be
That's what you buy in the store.
Well, if they usually sell it, it's usually make it dry enough that you don't have this problem. But
it's not pleasurable to keep your hands roasted.
right, but if I'm making it at home, I can make it at home, and I'll make it at home, and it will be still wet. Then you have this problem. Okay. In Dvar Shalem, Kol Shat Shein Tefech Matzah. Tfiach L'Kuli Yama Mutter L'Ochel B'Lo L'Tila.
Maybe it's variable honey. That's sort of solidified, but
I would just tell you, I don't like to talk about these things because I'm not sure I know exactly what I'm talking about. But what's called a liquid and what's called a solid, for many different halachas, there's different levels.
how big it has to be.
For titaniruk, yeah, that's one subject. But I'll just tell you, I'll just use as an example, titaniruk, that's still called a liquid, in Bishul, Achar Bishul, and Shabbos, I don't think we go together. How liquidy does something have to be, or how solid does something have to be on Shabbos for it to be called a solid?
As far as warming it up.
Yeah. Okay, so just tell you that the machlokes haposkim is about ketchup. Is ketchup called a liquid or a solid? And as I always say, it probably depends what brand, right? But what it means to me is anything which is like tomato paste or something like that, that's for sure a solid. Now, would you say that that's tefech havanas latfiach? I would say 100%, right? So, yeah, you have to know what you're talking about. Okay. You bought dvash and the dvash was still wasn't separated from the honeycomb. It was never called a mashke. You already bought liquefied honey. Even though you used it to be metagen oichel. If you're eating with a fork, if you're making it with sugar, because sugar is not from the Zayin mashkins. Okay. Shemen, hainu shemen zayis. Umashra deshar shemanim ein v'chol mashke. I don't know why he says mashma. I think it's another pashit. Okay. Cholov. Who adin mei cholov? I'm not sure what mei cholov is translated in whey. Okay. I don't think so, because whey, I think, is too thick for what mei cholov is. Okay. Ochema shelimuach. L'chein ha'toiv.
Whatever doesn't solidify.
Okay.
It's not there.
All right. L'chein ha'toiv b'hem davar ma'achol tzach netilas yadav. Im hoya chema krusha ein tzach lital yadav. The chema krusha havi oichel. V'oichel davar v'tugim v'chema shehi lacha agabov tzach lital yadav. If you're eating something that was fried in butter, if it's lach, then you need it till sedai. Muchayadim koso davka shenimuach hachema b'machas b'shas tigum kodim sheniach ha'oichel l'soichoi v'nasa oleo shem mashke l'kodim. This is the same chayadim. It has to be that it liquefied beforehand. Avo k'shenimuach achar kach dekayim the mashke l'sakin oichel hu oichel davar betugim b'shuman or b'mei beitzim l'kul yam no havi mashke, and you don't need anything. Dumb. This is a fascinating Mishnah Berurah. Mishnah Berurah says, what are we talking about dumb? Because you're not allowed to eat dumb, as far as I know, right? So, dumb k'dei nazva, da'asal echol dumb. V'dam dogim v'chagovim lo mikri mashke. V'ulai ma'ish oichel maichel tivu b'dam mepnei refuah p'koach nefesh. We're talking about that he's eating it for p'koach nefesh, and then you would need netilas yadayim. Mayim u'melech ha'osim mimayim havi mashke. ולכן אם אוכל צנון במלח, הבידו שטיבול במשקה, וצריך ליטול יודוב, ונראה דמי שהמלח היה לך בשעס טיבול. V'stam melech hu karish haloi ein din mashke aleh kois yudalit. Okay. Yes. Yeah. If anybody who eats food for refuah,
Only if it's regular food.
yeah, we're talking about regular food. And yadav noigos, gezerah, even though you're not touching the place where there's mashke, but there's gezerah shama yigaboy. Beloi bracha. This is the subject, the main subject. Okay. So we're going to learn this slowly. Okay. Yesh mixas rishonim desfir de lo yitzicha chav netilas yadayim lo shetibu b'mashke. Ela b'meihem shay'oichlin b'tahira. Ma she'en ken achshav shekulon t'mei meisim. These whole halachas are obsolete. V'lachein lo yivorach al netilas yadayim shesofik brachas lahakim. Okay. V'hine Magen Avrohom hevi b'shem alechem chamudos. He brings that the minig was that people don't wash for those to bula barashva. V'yesh lehem amash sheismachu dahainu aksas rishonim hanal. Aval harbe achroinim mechmirim ma'od b'davar because of the ikik rov ha'paisim l'tzorch l'tila medina af b'zman hazeh.
The point of the Tilsidam is because we want to come back to.
Yeah, but the question was, did they make it? But did they make it on this? Maybe they only made it on bread. Okay. After the oilam ain't noggin the varach, hakaponim ain't the hakalecha b'li netila, v'tzorch lezel kol diri netila k'mo lepas. Mikol mokom, b'pachas mikazayis nearly she'en the hachim v'zeh klal, afilu b'pas, the habi b'achreinim are mekil, so therefore you're eating less than a kezayis, so no shedibu b'mashke, you don't have to wash. I would just like to say over, a story which I know secondhand, and I believe that this story is a very important story for how to run your Yiddishkeit in general. I have a friend of mine who his father davened together with Shlomo Zalman Auerbach for probably about 50 years. And he one time asked him, Shlomo Zalman, I heard this from my friend, who heard the story from his shver. He asked Shlomo Zalman if he has to wash for dosha tibula b'mashke. And Shlomo Zalman stopped for a minute and he said, no, you don't have to. The minute oilam is 3 mekel. Fine. 25 years later, this guy's shver was standing next to Shlomo Zalman, and a bocher came over to Shlomo Zalman and asked him, do you have to wash for dosha tibula b'mashke? And Shlomo Zalman stopped to think for a minute, and he says, it's kedai. So my friend Shver, after the bocher left, went back to Shlomo Zalman and says, I asked you this question 25 years ago and you said you don't have to. So Shlomo Zalman says you don't have to. So he says, so why did you tell this bocher to die? So Shlomo Zalman said, this is the important thing, Shlomo Zalman said, I see the way things are going, everything that it says in the Mishnah Berurah becomes halacha l'maisa. You don't have to be the last one. So this guy who's a bocher, so he's already in the door that the Mishnah Berurah is going to be the bottom line. So it's kedai. I didn't tell him he has to. It's kedai. You that you're already from a earlier generation, you don't have to. Okay, that's like a fascinating, if
Compensation for any stuff with those.
I don't know if that's exactly the pshat. I would just say that every generation has their way of attaching themselves to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I don't know if it's necessarily an eskat naderes. I'll just tell you from the things that I see that are amazing. Today, you see people that you wouldn't believe that they would be wearing tzitzis. Somebody like them 30 years ago wouldn't be wearing tzitzis. 30 years ago, you don't know math?
No, these people put it on because of the war. A lot of people said that.
No, I'm not talking about that. No. It's nothing to do with this last October 7th. It's become, I don't know if I say the word fashionable, but it's almost wearing tzitzis is almost like wearing a yarmulke. When I came to Eretz Yisrael, there were many chilonim who wore yarmulkes. I see that less and less, but there are people who are very not religious, but marginally, traditional, that they are Masorati, that they wear tzitzis. With a yarmulke. Yeah, no, I'm just saying that they're different. These are society-dictated things which change. And sometimes they change for the better, sometimes they change for the worse. But that's, people have different ways of attaching themselves to their Yiddishkeit. Okay. Okay. Halacha hey. Hanoito yad of the peiros, which there is no real reason to do that. Hareze megase haruach. He is called a Baal Gaiva. Yes. Right. Okay.
Sounds like things get wet. Vegetables or halachos get wet.
I didn't hear any question. You made a statement.
No, I'm sorry. I wasn't here right at the beginning. I mean, there's two reasons to wash: for bread and for.
Right. So we're talking about if you're eating vegetables that they got wet and they still are wet, then you should wash. That's what the Mishnah Berurah says. Well, now we're talking about things which don't get wet. You're eating right now cookies. Okay, is that a reason to wash? Okay, that's what we're talking about. The person that does is called Megasia. Why? Shamar ba'athar shu medaktik b'mitzvahs ma'ashein tzarech. The bedino articulate qualities yadayim leperes k'moshe kosum sivkan beis. The mother also b'teres chiva afilu im lo yivarech al netilazu kivan shenotlu mishum mitzvahs netila. I would just like to clear the air a little bit. If somebody would ask me, what would I say this guy is? I wouldn't say he's Megaser. I say he's an idiot. There is no... That's like saying a guy who's washing his hands in the middle of nothing. No, in other words, to say...
Why did he say that?
I don't know. I'm saying this is a... Right? That's what I'm saying.
People on CD now, and they do all kinds of things.
So are you agreeing with me or are you disagreeing? I don't know.
I wouldn't call him an idiot. He has an illness.
No, this person, he's doing it because, I decided...
People watch it all the time for nothing. Okay.
Yeah, he's trying to do it until Sudan, not because
if he's doing it, okay.
He's trying to be the Sudan.
And that's what Mishnah Berurah says. It has to be that you're doing it as a chiyuv. So if a person says, I think we should do Shabbos twice a week. Right? So what do we call him? He's Megasia Ruach? What is he?
He's living on the date line.
Okay. All right. Okay, I have possibly an answer to you.
No one who says like we should do this or something?
I don't think so. At least the Mishnah Berurah doesn't say that there is.
Yeah.
So, it didn't explain it. I believe that I have an answer possible for this question. But anyways, why is he Megasi Aruach? He's an idiot.
He's doing it publicly.
It doesn't make any, I could read.
Before he eats food. He decides he's going to take a swim before he eats food. He takes a swim.
Yeah. So he's Megasi Aruach? What is he?
He's a crazy guy. I don't know.
He's not swimming for halachic reason.
There is no halachic reason.
No, he thinks there's halachic reason.
So he's an idiot. He made up a halach. It's not a kaseh aruach. He made up he wrote a halach in the Shulchan Aruch and said, I follow my own halachas. So you're crazy.
Halachas, they do it when it's wet. I'm not for doing it when it's dry.
You're not doing anything.
But he's doing it. That's in the background.
But that's like keeping Shabbos on Tuesday.
All right, we'll stop over here.
It's like keeping double Rabbeinu Tam.